Ecosystems. When we talk about ecosystems, I think it's important to distinguish the difference between ecosystems and systems theory. One of the primary differences is that when we talk about ecosystems, the environment includes the physical or the non-human elements. And systems theory is less explicit about the place and role of those non-human elements. So ecosystems emphasizes understanding people and their environment and the nature of their transactions. Some argue that ecosystems and systems theory also differ in their conceptualization of boundaries and exchange across those boundaries. So first of all, let's define the social environment. In terms of ecosystems, we're talking about the wide variety of elements that impact humans in their daily lives. So we're talking about not only the relationships, we're also talking about the physical elements, but we're also talking about elements that are more conceptual, such as social, economical, political forces, and social institutions. Chetkow and Yanov, I always say that wrong, envisioned 6 environments. And so you can see here in the middle, they have the individual consciousness, the mind, body, and soul. And then the first circle is the family environment. So in there, they have dog, relatives, siblings, father, mother. And then the next ring out is the participatory environment, which includes friends, neighborhood, peer group, school, ethnic group, stores, job. And then we have the next ring, which is community environment, which includes social class, which you might wonder what the difference is, why the ethnic group is in the participatory environment and they've placed social class in the community environment, which is a good question. Reference groups they have in the community environment, organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, political party branch, voluntary agencies, city halls, theater, establishments, those sorts of aspects. Then we have the next ring out, which is national environment, which is ideas like patriotism, the army, fashion and literature, government, Supreme Court, manufacturers associations, all of those sorts of national aspects. The next one out is the international environment, which includes weather, war, United Nations, the Postal Unit, World Court, Olympics, organizations like IBM, the European Common Market, stock exchange, so on and so forth. And then their last ring is cosmic environment, which is archetypes, God's love, justice, truth, and they also include the sun, planets, moon, and stars. So let's see, I can't quite get down there to... Sorry, my little arrow disappeared. There we go. So the next piece is, you'll remember these terms from systems theory, which is output and input. So these have to do with the energy, just as it says, that is coming into or out of the environment. So this is the natural power of active involvement between people and their environment. Adaptation is the ability to adjust to the surrounding environmental conditions. So it implies the ongoing process of change. People have to adapt to their environment, and if they don't adapt, then we have stressors, and it causes stress on the individual and we can have some maladaptions. So when you think about adaptation, think about changes that happen and whether adaptations occur. I was thinking about wildlife, because we live in Wyoming, and how when areas where wildlife has historically lived is buildings are built in those areas and push the wildlife out of areas that they're typically in, some animals adapt, such as raccoons. What do raccoons do? They come into town, they dig in garbage cans, they're very adaptable. And so that's an example of an animal that has good adaptation skills. One of the aspects that helps to determine whether adaptation will occur, positive adaptation, not maladaptation, is the person and environment fit. So Kirst Ashman gives the example of an individual who is Muslim and a person of color who is just beginning to learn English and lives in a neighborhood composed almost exclusively of Roman Catholic white people. All right? So his ability to adapt is going to depend on how his neighbors react to him. If they discriminate and they reject him because of his differences, he's going to have a negative adaptation or a maladaptation. But on the other hand, if his neighbors accept and appreciate his differences, this will help him adapt. It doesn't necessarily mean he will adapt, but it will assist in the process. These three terms are very closely related. So the first one is a stressor. A stressor, according to Stressor and Kirst Ashman, is a demand, situation, or circumstance that results in a physiological and or emotional tension. In other words, it causes stress. So the stress is then the resulting physiological and or emotional tension that is produced by the stressor. And then the individual's ability to adapt to that circumstance that is causing the stressor is their ability to cope. So coping is the efforts to regulate immobilizing negative feelings and problem-solving strategies to handle the demands posed by the life stressor. And we need to remember that positive changes also cause stress, because it is that ability to be able to adapt. And asking an individual or system to adapt is going to cause some discomfort and stress in the process of that adaptation. The next term is relatedness. And relatedness is the attachment to others in friendships, social networks, kinship, and other positive relationships in the social environment, according to Germain and Jitterman. So this really truly is that sense of belonging. How do you feel, or how does the system belong in its setting? So if you're talking about a neighborhood within a larger community, how does that neighborhood feel connected to the larger community, or do they feel connected to the larger community? Is it have negative stereotypes? Do people avoid that neighborhood? Is it not connected? Does it not feel like it belongs to the larger community? And this is something that social workers spend a lot of time looking at, is the aspects of relatedness or belonging in order to help people cope with, or communities or client systems cope with their stressors. Interdependence is that mutual reliance on each person upon each other person. So it is that input and energy that is going into the system. So we can't live without one another, all right? So Chris Ashman gives the example of building a house. So say I want to build a house, all right? So I've got my parcel of land, and I don't have the tools to dig a hole to build the foundation. And so I'm going to have to rely on other individuals who have those machines at their disposal. And so I'm going to pay for them to do that. I also need people who have expertise in laying a foundation, individuals who have skills in carpentry work, in plumbing, in electricity, and then I'm going to want my plumbing connected with the city plumbing. I'm going to not live off the grid, and so I'm going to want my electrical system plugged into the city's electrical system. And so that is that interdependence of all those different factors and how they connect together in order for me to get my house built, and then my house to be a modern house that I can live in with today's standards. So when we talk about ecosystems, our target of change is the micro, the meso, and the macro. So the micro client system would be an individual, the meso would be any small group, and then the macro is a system larger than a small group. Okay, so typically organizations and communities. And that in a nutshell is ecosystems.